Flying out to El Salvador was interesting. Right when we landed and we're walking out of the airport, the first thing I noticed was the humidity. You could just see it was wet on the windows from all the, from just the AC on the inside and the humidity on the outside. It was just awful. So as soon as we stepped out, you could just feel the humidity just hit you like a brick. And it was kind of a shock. I'd never been in a place so hot and humid in my life, so instantly I was sweating, and I was already nervous going into the mission field and meeting the president. But Presidente Cordon was my mission president, and he was also my older sister's mission president, which was really neat. So he kind of already knew about me because my sister had emailed him and talked to him about me. But it was interesting because I remember him sitting me down and being like, okay, Sister Clark, like, I understand your sister served here, but that was her mission and this is your mission. Don't compare yourself to her. Don't try to, look up to her standards as to the things that she accomplished on her mission. And so I guess it's one thing I could advise to missionaries is really make your mission your own, and just have an open heart and an open mind to the things that you're about to experience. But yeah, my mission president, Presidente Cordon, was so sweet. My trainer was also very sweet. She was very hardworking. I was not used to waking up super early and working as hard as we did. She would always snap her fingers and be like, okay, hermana, let's go. And she just worked really hard. I will always be grateful to her because she taught me so much of the importance of putting people first and about being obedient, strictly obedient to the rules of the mission. And we saw a lot of blessings. We were very successful for the first half that I was with her. I ended up having another trainer because my first trainer got transferred to another area a month into my mission. And so then my second trainer, she also taught me a lot.
I was a little sick in the MTC, and I had taken NyQuil the night before, which is just kind of a bad idea. I was out that night, and so I woke up with my travel buddy late, and so we had to scramble to get everything together. It wasn't too big of a deal, but we were a little sad because we wanted to we actually wanted to take a really warm shower for a long time before we actually left, because we had heard that there weren't going to be any warm showers anymore, and so we wanted to say goodbye. Anyway, so we got up, we were getting to the airport and everything, and got on the plane. It was great. I was really excited to see when we got into the terminal at Dallas. We had a layover in Dallas. When we got there, I was really excited to see the McDonald's arches. That was something I hadn't seen in a long time. The MTC food is great, but sometimes you miss a Big Mac every once in a while. So I got to chow down on one of those. And what I didn't realize was that once we had gotten on the plane from Dallas to El Salvador, they were going to serve a meal. And so I was already full from, my lunch and from my layover. And so, but I was just like, oh, hey, free meal on a plane. It was pretty cool. So I decided, I'd eat it again. And so I was decently full once we arrived in El Salvador. Of course, it was raining. We actually were getting there at the kind of end of the rainy season. And we arrived there in September, so it was like that tail end. And so we, get off the plane, and people had told me like the humidity was gonna, hit you, and it was gonna be really humid, you're gonna be sweaty. And so I got off, we were in the terminal, and I was just like, it's a little humid, but not bad. I mean, they were just, being wimps or whatever, that was my thought process. And so, we got our bags, and I remember being incredibly nervous because once we got to immigration, I was just like, these people, they aren't going to speak any English. I'm not very good at my Spanish. I was a little nervous, to talk to him. And so once we got up to the desk, we handed him our passports, and I just was like, I was at a loss for words, I didn't know what to say. And she just, she kind of looked at me and, just checking my picture and everything, and gave me a stamp. And I believe we had to pay some kind of transaction fee. And I think I remember her saying $10 in Spanish or something like that. And I barely caught it. I almost didn't catch it. And so I was just, scrambling. And, I was really relieved, to get past that, whew, smooth sailing, immigration. And there was at the end of immigration, they had a random search like box that you had to go through, and it had a red light and a green light. And so it had a green light, you were fine. Once it got a red light, then they just randomly search you, And I was like, as I was standing in line, I was just like, I don't want to get a red light. Please don't get a red light. No red light, I was very nervous about that. And so I get up there, and I understood. I was surprised because I understood what the security officer running the booth, he was just like, what group are you guys with? And I understood what he said, and I started getting really excited. I was just like, oh, look, here's my first experience. I'm going to share the gospel with this guy, that doesn't know who we are. And I couldn't because, I didn't really know the words. And I was just like, okay, we are, I started, fumbling in Spanish to say it. But before I had realized it, I, had gotten the green light, and I was getting shuffled through. And then I was like, oh, I wish I would have gotten the red light. I would have been able to talk to him. Oh, maybe, hopefully talk to him. And so that was an interesting experience, getting off the plane. And we were supposed to go out the doors, and they were automatic doors. And so we were just walking out, and the automatic doors just opened, and there it was, just, the humidity. And I was just like, I knew exactly what they were talking about then. I was just, you were just hit with it. And then you just immediately started to sweat. And, we're all in our suits here. And I'm thrilled to be there. I'm really excited to be there. But I'm like sweating like a dog here. And so that was definitely interesting. Our mission president and his wife were there to welcome us and everything. So, we got all settled in. And I couldn't believe how hot it was, and so I was really excited, and I wanted to take a picture. So I got with my travel buddy, and we took a picture. And so I have a picture of that moment when I had just gotten off. I was really excited. You can just kind of see like the excitement in our faces, but also just we're all like wet, just drenched with sweat. And so that's one thing about El Salvador, is that you'll always be sweating. You'll constantly be sweating. The only time I really wasn't was maybe in the middle of the night, early in the morning. That's probably when you weren't sweating because you weren't really doing anything. So, but that was one of my favorite experiences, was actually getting here. So once we got settled in, we went to the mission home. And keep in mind, I'm pretty full from, my 2 meals. And we get to the mission home, and, lo and behold, there's this giant feast that, the mission president's wife has prepared for us. And so I'm just like, oh, this is great. So I get some food, and I sit down to eat, and I realize that I'm incredibly full. I've had enough. And I didn't want to be rude or anything, because in that culture, if you reject food for whatever reason, it's a little offensive. Like, they're very gracious, they'll give you food, and it's very kind of them. And so sorry, I have an itchy nose. Oh. And so that ideal is just like a commonality, just out of common courtesy. And so, I was eating, I didn't know my mission president's wife very well, so I was just trying to be very gracious. And I was just thinking in my head, just like, I don't know how much more I can take. And so I started eating, and I finished the meal, and I was just, okay, I'm good. And then after the meal, the mission president's wife, she brought out what are called pupusas. Pupusas are a common dish in El Salvador. You'll get very used to them. You'll love them, which are basically these just, simply put, they're tortillas and they make these tortillas a little thick, and they stuff pretty much whatever you want in there. The most common one is like, beans and cheese, or sometimes they put what's called chicharron in them, which is basically kind of like a seasoned pork, and they put in there. We could never eat that one because we couldn't eat pork, but I can get to that later. And then sometimes just cheese. Anyway, the mission president's wife had made some. She was originally from Guatemala, so she had learned to make them. And she brought them out, and I really wanted to try them. I really did. But I was like, if I eat any more, something bad might happen. So, I kept from eating those. And I managed, everything was great. And so that was definitely a fun experience, because, I couldn't focus on anything because I was just trying to just shovel down this food without, having any complaints or any problems or anything like that. So that was kind of a funny experience that I had my first few hours of the mission. So, yeah.
That was probably the biggest culture shock for me. The first thing. We get in the house and I'm like, I'm gonna live like this? It's just different from America. So different. Cockroaches live with you. And the hardest thing for me was taking a shower. Our shower head wasn't working, so we had to use a bucket of water. Cold water. And I remember the first time I showered, I was crying so much. I was bawling. I was like, I can't live like this. How am I going to do this every day for 18 months? And my companion knocks on the door. She's like, are you okay? I'm like, fine. But like, that was when it hit me. Like, I'm in El Salvador. I don't have a shower. I don't have a pillow. I didn't have all of the things we get in America. And at first I was like, I don't know, you get angry. Not angry, but you're like disappointed. And then I got used to it. And it was just the way of life, I had a good system of showering with a bucket. When my trainer left and I started training, I had to put on a good face. So I pretended like everything was great, and then it suddenly did become great. I can't really remember the transition, but I had to be like, this is fine, this is great, we shower buckets. And then I was like, no, but really, it's fine. My mission was completely walking. The only people that had a car were the office people. So, walking, running, I'm just kidding, sometimes, and using the bus. That was fun. Yeah, you're on a roller coaster on the bus, and you're in a clown car because they fit as many people as they can in. Mm-hmm. There were times where I was just hanging out of the bus, holding on the rail, just hanging there. The only thing I had was holding on for my dear life, and they were going so fast, and I was just hanging there like, oh my gosh, if I let go, I'll die. That's dangerous. So I would recommend not doing that in El Salvador. I'm sure the mission president would not approve of it, but there were times when you just had to jump on and you couldn't get in. Oh, I believe in the gift of tongues. I think it was not as bad as it should have been, as it would be if I didn't have that extra help, because I struggled at first, but I pushed. I mean, you really have to work for it if you want to learn the language, because there's sisters or elders that never really learn the language, I don't know if you saw that in your mission, but if you don't want to, you're not going to. You have to want to learn. And I think I honestly could handle a conversation in 4 months. It went fast. And I was surprised. I mean, my whole mission, I was improving. But by 4 months, I felt good. about the language. Yeah, I was frustrated in the beginning of my mission because I couldn't focus on the people because I couldn't understand their problems. And I was like, how am I going to be a missionary if I don't know what I'm doing? I don't know what they're saying. So after I learned the language, it felt good. It was like, okay, now I can focus on them. And I mean, there was good and bad to both, you know? Like, when you couldn't speak the language, I feel like the Spirit did hit them harder when you spoke. And the things you said were, like, strong because it was all you knew. So it had to be good. Yeah, you're desperate. And they, like, see it. They're like, wow, these people are serious. Because you're like, I'm just a girl from Philadelphia who has never been outside of the country and barely knows the language, but I know this is true, so please listen. And they're like, okay. Oh, they had doorbells.
Okay.
And when they didn't have doorbells, you knocked really hard or you shouted because they had a lot of gates. I like found that people were way more open when you asked them for help first. So you would say, do you know how to get here? Or do you know who this person is? They'd be like, oh, sure. And like they'd talk to you. And then you put in your little tidbit.